I am Nick Shell, and behind me you see a pine tree. But no, not just any pine tree in the state of Tennessee. Why, there we have it. It's a comment. We're gonna find out what it says. Now, in case you're new to how this thing works here on my channel, if you leave a comment in a video, it might just grow on a tree that I'm gonna read. So, let's see what a faithful subscriber named Robert had to say today. On my video that I did yesterday, do we value and fear hair loss more than death? That was the video I made. And what's funny is I did 3 videos yesterday during the afternoon, and out of the 3, this one had the least amount of views on it. Whereas a few hours later, it only had about 20 hits. The others had over 60. So that answers our question, doesn't it? That we don't even value that video. We don't care to know that. We already know that we are more afraid of hair loss than we are death. So that answers that question, doesn't it? But anyway, Robert has this to say, and this is just an excerpt of what he said. He had quite a long comment, which I appreciate every word of, but for time's sake, here's the part we're going to read from the comment. Here's what Robert said, quote, I'd say I do fear hair loss more than death at this point, and I'm almost certainly more obsessed with the subject than you are. I don't think you are obsessed at all, even though many viewers say otherwise. Most teen, 20 and 30-something-year-old men probably also fear balding more than death. He goes on to say, so illogical, our deepest fears and daily reoccurring stupid, destructive thoughts, end quote. Well said, Robert, and thanks for backing me up on that. That's really ultimately a thesis of what this channel is all about, that we place so much value on something that the rest of the world doesn't care about. Just like my wife, she doesn't care if I have hair. She doesn't. It's funny because I think back to, if you can believe it, this Sunday, we're just a couple days away from it being an entire decade since my wife and I went on our first date. And of course, that fateful John Mayer concert in Huntsville, Alabama, made our last first date with anyone, because we've been together ever since. It's been almost a decade now. But I remember being at that John Mayer concert, and back on February 5th, 2007, and I remember thinking there was a guy in front of us, like several rows in front of us, and he was like dancing like this at the concert. So obviously, being the mid-20s kids that we were laughing about it. We couldn't not laugh at how funny it was, laughing to ourselves, of course. And I noticed that the guy was completely bald on top, but he had like the Bozo or Dr. Phil thing going on. And so we were laughing at him dancing, but then I forget which one of us, and we'll just say it was me, or one of us noticed that he was bald. And I said to her, I said, well, my dad still has some hair on top, so at least I'll never have to worry about being that bald. And it's funny though, that was our first date almost a decade ago, and I pointed that out, which tells you how preoccupied I was back then, much more so than now, a decade later, being that I still have this much hair. But yeah, it's true. When you're younger, especially in your teens, 20s, and even 30s, it's easier to be more obsessed with that. And of course, people who are new to this channel think I'm obsessed, but yet you're the one subscribing to me watching these videos, right? So I'm here to help. That's why I make the videos. But here's what I want to talk about in this video today. At what point does this end? At what point does our friendship end? At what point do I stop helping you? Well, the answer to that is, as long as I've got subscribership growing, I'm not going to stop doing this. I'm not going to stop making videos. As long as I'm alive, I'm not going to plan on stopping doing this. Granted, I guess because for a guy like me, I actually fear death more than I do hair loss, right? But it's funny. I think back to also, this was over a decade ago now. Back when I had moved to Nashville and I had a group of friends, we hung out. We were all single, and we hung out all the time. And we would go to work and then hang out at night in downtown Nashville, and we were inseparable, And I remember at one point, one of the people said, Sarah is her name, she said, at what point does the friendship end? And I laughed. I was like, what are you talking about? She said, come on, at some point, we're all going to end up dating somebody, get married, move away, have kids. But leading up to that, at some point, this is going to end. And I just shook off the idea that that would ever be a possibility. But what's funny is months later, I met my wife and started the whole chain reaction, because from there, we all met someone, got married, moved away, had kids. And it may be crazy to think about, but there's a chance that I will not always be part of your life. There's a chance that one day you'll get enough of what you needed, of what you came here for. And I don't mean that in a negative way, like, I've had enough of Nick Show, I'm tired of this. No, I don't mean in a negative way. I just think that at some point there's a good chance you're going to graduate from needing what I have to offer. Now granted, as I expressed last week in a video, that I've grown as a character. There's been a lot of character development in what I have to offer and what I do in these videos. But at some point, there's a theory that you're going to outgrow me. You're not going to need me anymore. Just like I don't actually obsess over hair loss. I just make videos about it for people who are. Yeah, I am saying you're obsessed, but it is true that you're the one obsessed, not me. I can make videos like this all day long, and I wish I could make more. I've actually been experimenting on you. The last couple of days, I made 4 videos a day. Just not all at once. I did 3 and then 1 at night, just to see if I could get away with it, just to see if anybody would leave a comment saying I'm making too many videos. Of course, I guess it helps that I wrote it into the rules last week that if you complain that I make too many videos, that you're not part of the brotherhood. So maybe that helps. But either way, I'm testing people's obsession to see if I keep creating content, how much are they going to need? See how it works? The people watching are the ones subscribing to me, following me. I'm not following one. Can you believe I don't subscribe to anyone? Granted, my favorite channel on YouTube is cracked.com, and I also love Honest Trailers, but even then I don't subscribe to them, right? So what I'm showing you, what I'm demonstrating to you, with all due respect, and I'm kind of joking around about it, but ultimately, you need me. You need what I have to offer in your life. You're getting through this stage in your life. Now, if I'm really good at what I do, then ultimately you won't be subscribing forever, right? Because at some point you'll get to the point where I am, where you're not actually obsessed with hair loss. You truly find inner peace with it. And if you haven't watched the five clues or whatever that you have inner peace, you need to watch that video, because that's what I'm using as the test to prove, whether you have moved on or not. See, I've moved on to the point where now I can teach other people about it, and people are listening to me, and people are following me on it, right? But at what point do you get to that point where you graduate? You're like, I no longer need to hear this stuff. I get it. I understand it, and I'm cool with it, and I don't need a daily dose of 3, sometimes 4 videos about hair loss. Okay, Nick's right. He made some great points. He got me where I needed to be. And I realize now that my value as a man is not based on hair loss. Even though I used to place that value, the rest of the world doesn't value me that way. Okay, I get it. Done. And then you move on and you don't worry about it anymore. Now, do you think about it? Sure. I still will think about hair loss, but it's just like the thing about with death. The people are thinking more about hair loss than they are death. Well, I'm not obsessed with the thought of dying, and oh no, I still think about it. I still acknowledge it, just like I acknowledge my hair loss when I look in the mirror. But it doesn't bother me. It honestly doesn't bother me. So in closing, let's fathom the fact that at some point, if I'm really good enough at what I'm doing here, you're going to stop subscribing, not because you get tired of me or not because I annoy you, which, again, we talked about my likable arrogance quality that I talked about yesterday, and that, of course, Robert himself acknowledged. I embrace that. I love being likably arrogant. But at some point, you're not going to need what I have to say anymore. You're going to grow out of this, whether it's because you get old enough to not care, whether it's because you realize that I'm speaking truth in all these things, that ultimately you don't need me anymore. That is a possibility at some point. And it's funny, so where is the end in sight? I don't know, and it's going to be different for everybody. Maybe this could be, unfortunately, the video, the last one that you watch of me. You're like, oh yeah, he makes a good point, I'm going to stop watching him now. But for others, you keep watching for months and months, and every time I make a new video, you're like, wow, I never thought about that way. I'm glad I watched that video. This is a growing empire. Yes, Walter White. This is a growing empire now that we've got. And the more of you there are, the more opinions that they're going to show up on comment trees. So I'm still learning every day. I'm over my obsession, of course, but I'm not over hosting this. I love being a part of what I do here in making this channel. So thank you for being a part of it. And we'll see what grows next on those magical comment trees. I'm Nick Shell, and I'm not obsessed with hair loss.